Hello, nerds for Yang.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds.
I'm saying, now with this campaign, bang, dang, it's and true. Come roll with the gang.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds. It's a delight to be here.
Rishi Kumar, thank you, sir, for coming to the Nerd Zone. We have, this is like the first interview I've done where it actually affects me directly in a very meaningful way. We've interviewed a lot of congressional candidates on the Nerds for Humanity podcast, but I recently moved 2 weeks ago to the great state of California, specifically to Redwood City. And I looked up my congressional district and I said, I wonder who's running for office to represent my interests. And your name was one of the two that came up. And so I'm so glad that your team agreed to come on the show and have a chat with me.
I'm delighted to be here, Tom, and I'm at your service already.
Look at this. What a great congressman. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Rishi. I don't think you are a career politician. So what's your background?
Well, let me tell you this, Tom. I'm a nerd.
I love it.
I'm a high-tech geek, and that's how I define myself. And I actually take a lot of pride in being a geek. A Silicon Valley geek is always a rock star here. And we are powering the economy of California. The Bay Area is the 19th largest economy of the world. And we are not only powering the economy of California, but also of the United States. And that defines who I am, working for companies like IBM and Cisco. But my political journey started back in 2013 when I decided to run for the California Democratic Party delegate and an executive board member seat. And I was very surprised, extremely surprised when I ended up winning. There were 43 people running, ended up getting the top spot. And here I am running for Congress. But that journey has been very empowering through city council in the city of Saratoga. And my re-election, we ended up getting the most votes in the 60 years election history of Saratoga. So my agenda is to solve the big challenges, not a career politician. We don't take any PAC money, no special interest group money, and we are there to solve the problems of the people. I call it people-centric behavior.
So what do you think helped propel you to win that first race that you ran with so many other candidates? What was it about your candidacy that attracted so much support?
It was interesting, Tom, because I never ever thought that a political career would be calling for me or would be my thing at all. Mm-hmm. But a state senator reached out and he basically wanted to explore options of me running in this particular race as a delegate and as an e-board member. And I had no idea, truly speaking, candidly, I had no idea what that entailed. But the reason was because I'd been an activist in the local community, solving different problems, stepping up, raising funds for the senior center, or pushing back on certain changes that were made by the school board. And what I was doing was I was applying the world of tech and innovating just a little bit tad with the problem solving and the ability to communicate and engage the people. And very soon people started looking at me for different problems that would happen in the community. And I would look around like, why me? Why me? But it became my calling. And initially, in fact, Tom, my wife would tell me that you're just wasting your time. Come back home and take care of the kids. But people started reaching out to her and telling her, what an amazing guy your husband is. And it's like, who are you talking about? But it's all good. I think it sparked a lot of immense joy in me to be out there addressing problems. I call it, giving to the world is so much more exciting and interesting than taking. And this is my mission in running for Congress.
A lot of people say when folks from the private sector go and get involved in public service, that it's a very hard transition because things don't work the same way they might do at Cisco or IBM. And there is not as much of a clear kind of escalation path and way to close out issues and a sense of flexibility in terms of making kind of hard, complex decisions. Have you experienced that? It sounds like you were able to apply some of the stuff from your engineering and private sector background into government service. How was that transition for you?
I think a click has to happen within us. A light bulb has to turn on, which is, this is it. It's a new world. It's a different world in the world of public sector. And, joining the planning commission, almost like I would say 12 years ago, I realized that, hey, this is completely different. And that led to a single reconciliation in my head that, look, this is a different world. We have to operate differently. But what I did, once that click happened, what I was able to do was to take some of these high-tech framework. I call it simply providing services cheaper, faster, better, of how you're approaching problems, how you're addressing them, and how you're making change happen. And once I realized that someone like me could be very effective, it became very energizing for me. And it still continues to play out like this.
Yeah, so it's great to hear a lot of the, faster, better, cheaper is a winning formula in a lot of products. And you wonder why government has struggled to be able to do that. What are your thoughts on the issues that face this district in particular? It's a unique district in that I imagine it has a lot of, people with resources. People are doing relatively well. I imagine. I'm sure there's all extremes, but are there specific things about this district that are high priority, or do you find that they generally map to the national issues of healthcare, economy, environment, that kind of thing?
I would say it's a little bit mixed bag. Obviously, I think if you look at the predominant issues we have, Tom, they're around the COVID-19 pandemic and the challenges it has imposed upon us with our economy, with healthcare, with education, with infrastructure, and lots of these similar challenges that every community across the United States is reeling with. But, what is happening here, though, we are very unique. We are actually the second most affluent congressional district in all of the United States. The first number one being Virginia's District 10. And we were actually number one until a few years ago. So, it has a different set of aspirations. And the people that flock here from every part of the globe, including from America, I call it a very special DNA pool. They are the high achievers. They are very driven. And it's like only the best survive here in Silicon Valley because it's a very work-driven culture. We are innovating with the best of minds. And you really have to step up your game if you want to succeed here. And this is also defining the aspirations of the people. When people are looking at challenges, for example, I don't know if you saw the hearing a couple of days back, the congressional hearing.
Which one?
This was the antitrust hearing that happened.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Thursday.
Yeah.
And, it becomes like a talk of parties where people are referencing some of the congressional leaders in terms of how they are presenting their questions and line of thought. And it's just very appalling, when you look at, and one of the congressional leaders from Silicon Valley calls it technologically illiterate congressional members. And we all see that, every time this happens, we are looking forward to it because it's going to be late night entertainment. And to some extent, I think what is happening, Tom, in a nutshell, is how we are different is, we are, like I said, we are the innovation economy. And something is pretty amazing out here. We have a secret sauce of investors, an ecosystem of engineers and talent from all parts of the world who are able to come out here and power the economy with their hard work and with their intelligence. And so the expectation is a little higher. And to some extent, what has happened is, our elected leaders have gone to sleep on the wheel. When you look at Menlo Park, which is, pretty much your next town over, has Facebook, and the whole Cambridge Analytica played out with citizens' privacy and how it influenced politics. And our elected leaders should have stepped up and done something about it. when we look at data privacy, it's a huge problem. And I don't think so our elected leaders really had a handle over it. But when it comes to someone like me from the world of tech, I could see the challenges that Facebook could impose upon the world, and it actually played out with that election. So I think there is a need for a synergy between the public and private sector to expand our economy and make it much more thriving compared to where we are today. If the public sector by itself was able to do so much, what can happen when there is a strong synergy established between our elected leaders and the CEOs, CTOs of the Valley? And that's something that is near and dear to my heart. And we really want to make sure that we are going to expand the economy out, but also address the challenges of those who don't have a voice. So I call myself running as a progressive capitalist, and we are challenging Congresswoman Anna Eshoo for the very first time in her 28 years from her left. And we have some very unique values. We are running for Medicare for all, and we are standing for the Green New Deal and the climate change. We have refused all PAC money, special interest group money, and it's definitely resonating quite well with our citizens here in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, well, congratulations on finishing in the top 2 through the primaries and going for the general election now. Are there, you mentioned that the incumbent has been in the seat for some time. I mean, part of me would argue like, well, I mean, I guess if people keep voting her in, maybe that means she's doing a good job. What do you think are the things that you would do differently? You mentioned some of them, like Medicare for all. Could you talk a little bit more about what makes you different from Congresswoman Eshoo?
Well, a couple of things, right? Let's do the double click, which is Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, 28 years. And to a large part, what goes on is, people are not tuning in. America is fairly prosperous. Things are going well. And we look at our elected leaders and we believe that they must be doing something right. So people are not really, dissecting resumes that they do in different parts of the world. Incumbency is a huge disadvantage in some parts of the world where they are constantly looking to see how we can make it better because they don't have those opportunities. Compared to out here in California, it has been a booming economy and we have great weather here and seems like everything is fine. But when you start analyzing it, Congresswoman Anna Eshoo is a little bit defining what the problem with American politics is. And for example, she's the #1 recipient of pharma money in the United States. And, she actually chairs the House Health Subcommittee. And being #1 and taking all that pharma money, how will you make choices of healthcare that will help protect the people? And we clearly haven't seen that with Congresswoman Anna Eshoo. She has received industry awards from the biologic industry for protecting the patents, extending it from 5 years to 12 years that have increased the price of drugs. And there are many third-party articles that have been written about it. But, people don't pay attention, and it takes some serious competition to run and uncover these types of facts and talk about it in the district. So this is where I am different. We don't take any PAC money. People have said, Rishi, after you win, you will be part of the system. And I'm like, no. We are there to solve problems. I'm a high-tech executive. I've got a very unique insight of why I'm running and what the challenges that we need to solve. And that clearly differentiates me from Anna, the keen insight of the world of tech. I think the privacy issues of Cambridge Analytica would not have played out if I was the congressional leader here in Silicon Valley, because I could clearly see the challenges that would happen. And then when you look at working on a pandemic preparedness plan, so when the pandemic hit, what I ended up doing, Tom, was we announced the Neighborhood Pandemic Preparedness Team, which is modeled after the Neighborhood Safety Watch program. And we engaged neighbors, engaged neighborhood leaders all across Silicon Valley. We had a few hundred leaders who signed up to help out. And we created a program of neighbors helping neighbors. And, we have we called actually 86,000 seniors. And we said, please stay quarantined, but we can help you with your groceries and medication. Now, this is what we do. And Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, it's been status quo politics. She's there in Washington and part of the Washington establishment. And you see their track record with healthcare. But also when you look at her the accomplishment, the last candidate statement back in March, had no accomplishments to report back from the last 28 years. There was a forward-looking story in terms of I'm going to address transportation, but there was really no innovation. A real vision was sort of missing in terms of all the challenges that we see here in Silicon Valley. Working on a pandemic preparedness plan for 15 years, which is what Congressman Anna Eshoo said in her op-ed piece that was published back in February. But the pandemic preparedness plan failed, and Congressman Anna Eshoo took some pride that, okay, I worked 15 years on a pandemic plan, but we really didn't have a plan. And with the congressional oversight, it should have worked no matter who's in the White House. So there are some serious challenges that our elected leaders in this country are imposing upon the people. And that's why we need a fresh new breed of leaders stepping in and addressing the needs of the people, addressing the problems of America, because we are at a tipping point, Tom. And if things continue like this, we will become irrelevant down the road. So we need to make the right choices, take our country back and steer it in the right direction.
What do you say to people who suggest that, well, DC and Congress and the federal government is just such a complicated place that, it's kind of like working at a new company. Like it takes you a while to figure out how the place works. And so that if Congressman Eshoo has 28 years, well, then she probably has all these relationships. She knows all of the tricks of the trade and how to get things done, yada yada. And then we send in a new person, and they're not even gonna know where the bathroom is. How do you address that concern?
Well, that's exactly what they said about Eric Swalwell when he was running against Pete Stark. And Eric won, and he's representing the district well. And then they said the same thing when Congressman Mike Honda was challenged by Ro Khanna, and Congressman Ro Khanna is stepped up his game. I mean, Congressman Honda had no bills in 25 years in the Congress. And this is the reason why, we need a fresh approach, a new leader stepping up. And, knowing the bathroom, that's not rocket science, I think, it's a new world, obviously, it's Washington, but, 6 months into it, just like a new job, right? I jumped from IBM to Cisco, and within a few months, you have a hang of the culture, you understand how to get things done, you understand who the people are. That's all it takes. It's not rocket science, but I'll tell you what, that clearly defines success. It's basically having a keen reason to be running, and having a perspective of what you want to do. And we have a clear perspective of what problems we need to solve in the first 2 years. We are there to solve problems. And if you can keep the eye squarely on that, forget the lobbyist. I hear of the story, the very first day somebody gets elected, they are taken to a luncheon and it's filled with lobbyists who are willing to wine and dine them, right? If you don't play in that game, if you're keeping your eyes squarely focused on what problems I'm going to work on, it will be very simple, Tom. I can guarantee you that.
Let's fast forward a couple years. Let's say you win and you've been in Congress for your term. What are some of the things that you want to say you accomplished, or how would you know that you were successful?
Well, let's talk about the pandemic. I think there are millions of people who don't have jobs here. The other day, I had a town hall meeting on Saturday over the weekend, and actually on Sunday. And somebody joined me and said, I was in the high tax bracket, and I'm reeling with the changes. And currently, I'm exploring, how can I get the Medi-Cal option for healthcare? This is it's put everybody into a topsy-turvy. We are in a tailspin. And so the economy is a number one focus, and we have to figure out how we can create jobs and bring it all back together. So that's extremely important on my agenda. How can we ensure that we are creating jobs here in Silicon Valley? Secondly, we are hurting. There is a need for healthcare. People would tell me in the pre-COVID-19 days that, Rishi, don't take away my private option. I really like it. But, now we are seeing so many Silicon Valley families, both the husband and wife don't have a job anymore. They're looking at Cobra, which is pretty expensive, that doesn't provide you coverage. So we need to ensure, that the needs of a family are being met in this crisis. So we are there to ensure that they have a safety net that they can land upon. So that is also driving, it's a very important imperative. Thirdly, we need to ensure that we are investing in education and infrastructure. And part of that, when you look at disadvantaged schools, they do not have that online network. They do not have the infrastructure needed to support like a Zoom education, or even for children who are sitting at home, but they don't have devices to be part of that education, right? So we need to invest into that. It's very, very important for us to ensure that. When you look at the pandemic, America fell down in its knees. We did not even handle it as good as compared to some of the third world countries. So we talk about ensuring that in the future, when there is a biowarfare, we are much better prepared. And what does that mean? It means looking at different options like healthcare analytics, which means looking at things like electronic medical record. Can we create a secure electronic medical record system that will help us provide data with these types of crises, whether we are in a biowarfare or a pandemic, that will help provide us insights in terms of how we can quickly open up our economy. And finally, when we look at the supply chain, how compromised we were, there were huge issues with that, with respect to our dependency on China. And, we just didn't have any control over it. So I talk about bringing manufacturing back, and it's become a national security issue right now. We are left exposed to the world, and we need to take matters in our own hands. So these are some of my top agenda items for the first 2 years.
Well, it sounds like you'd be pretty busy over there, and you certainly have highlighted a lot of important issues. One question from the audience here from Landline 51, who's a channel member. Thank you, Landline, for your support. What's your take, Rishi, on Huawei and 5G?
Okay. So firstly, with Huawei, I would like to talk about the intellectual property of the United States. And that has been compromised with Huawei. What I've heard is when there is a failure, and the 800 number that pops up used to be an 800 number of Cisco. And, this is not what we want in America. And I really want to ensure that American intellectual property is never, ever compromised. And we need to ensure that in the future, Silicon Valley, we are innovating here, and nobody should take this innovation for granted. We have to protect it. We have to protect our intellectual property. And, I'm not sure the context of the 5G question, so I would love to understand a little bit more about that.
Yeah, they're probably, the related Huawei products to build out 5G infrastructure. I mean, in general, do you feel like it's appropriate for the U.S. to block, acquisition of Huawei technology for the U.S. infrastructure? Or it sounds like you're supporting buying American in this regard, or what's your take?
Yes, correct. I think the post-COVID-19 world is a lot different when you look at President Trump recently talking about TikTok. Mm-hmm. And, we have actually used TikTok for pretty good purposes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we have a bunch of fellows internship program this summer. They are creating fun videos. They're enjoying it. And we have a pretty good following on TikTok. I mean, one of our videos went to like 500,000 hits, and I think over 1 million hits probably collectively with all the videos we have rolled out. But at the same time, what exposure do we have as Americans, right? That is something to be cautious about. And for me, that is number one. National security is an important priority for all of us. And we have to make sure that we are exercising prudent caution in terms of how we operate,
And so when it comes to TikTok, the president has floated the idea of banning it in the U.S. Do you feel like that is the appropriate course of action? I mean, as a capitalist, it doesn't sound super free market. On the other hand, from a national security point of view, it's certainly a very popular platform, but I don't know if people are using it for sensitive communications either.
Yeah, good point. So Tom, here is my take, right? So when you install an app on your phone, you never know what kind of access are you providing the application provider, right? Mm-hmm. So that's my big worry. And excuse me, it could be a challenge for us. And so my take is, if Microsoft is going through the acquisition, and then when we take over the assets, we have the code as well. We are going to look through the code. We'll look at the servers. We'll look at the data center where the data is sitting, and we have to bring everything back into the United States and make it secure. If that is the case, then I'm totally okay with that. So my take is this, Tom, as a mechanical engineer, as a Silicon Valley high-tech geek, what I believe in is that we really don't need to superimpose policies and regulations upon tech. We only do that when it comes to protecting people. And in this particular case with TikTok, I think we don't know what could be compromised, if the data is going to leave our country and sitting in different servers across the world. And that could be a challenge, So we have to protect the people, and that's the job of elected leaders to ensure that. And that's the context of what I have with respect to either when we talk about regulating tech or not regulating tech. There are simple drivers that tend to do that. So Facebook, for example, should not be regulated, but if they are trampling upon citizens' privacy, then yes, we need to regulate them for sure.
Let me play devil's advocate with you on the TikTok thing. I tried TikTok, wasn't for me, but I do wonder, like, if we as a country say no TikTok here because we're concerned about, security, or we don't have enough visibility into their operations and what they're doing with the data and the app and all that kind of stuff. You could see other countries making similar arguments about American products, like, well, we don't want Facebook because we don't know what Facebook is doing. And like, at some point, isn't that perhaps not in America's interest to be blocked from key markets?
Yes, in fact, I think when you look at America and China, that's exactly what is going on. And that is something to that with respect to how President Trump is talking about TikTok, right? Because I think, there is a trade imbalance between China and US, and our companies are not allowed to exist in China, but we are much more of an open economy. I think we are a democratic government, and, we sort of play things, I would say, by the rules, if I may call it that. And so there is a little bit of a trust when it comes to the United States government and our businesses here in comparison to things happening across the different world, So that's the reason why, obviously, I think as long as there is a trade balance, when, let's say, United Kingdom and America, when we are allowing our products to be sold there, and we are allowing their products to be sold here, there is a good synergy of, there's an alliance and trust that we've established. So these are the type of things that would dictate the choices that we should make as an economy,
Got it. Jekka Lego, also a channel member. Thank you for your support, Jekka Lego. He was curious about your views on basic income. This channel started about a little over a year ago, focused on Andrew Yang's presidential campaign. And so there's a lot of folks here who support basic income. I was curious what your take was on this. It was originally a fringe topic, but now has become more commonly talked about, especially in this COVID crisis.
Yes. So just about, I think a year ago, I was invited, Cupertino is right next door to Saratoga. And this was a very famous Chinese food restaurant. And I was invited to that restaurant to meet, guess who? Andrew Yang. And we sat down. There were a bunch of elected leaders from the city of Cupertino and local leaders. And we sat down, and that's where I talked to Andrew, and I got his book, and I read his book. And frankly speaking, I wasn't quite convinced that we needed UBI back then. But when I look at the challenge of the post-COVID-19 world, I'm a little bit more convinced that UBI, having a social net option, is probably very helpful. When you look at Andrew Yang, he was actually talking about lots of different data points that he has referenced in his book as well, about how economies thrive on the basis of something like a UBI, and he had multiple examples of that. America is still a very capitalistic nation, and I'm running as a progressive capitalist, and I believe in the free will economy, in terms of how we can power it, jumpstart it, and how we can engage people, the dynamic folks, to innovate pretty much on a daily basis, which is what happens here in Silicon Valley. But in the context of the post-COVID-19 world, we do need a social net option. So I'm completely for it in this COVID-19 world, because we have millions of people with no healthcare, with no income. When you look at the stimulus package, for example, Tom, the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Programs, the environmental disaster loans that were supposedly should have landed with people, we botched it up. I mean, the SBA site was crashing. And with the PPP loans, we decided to make the banks the mediators. And some of the mom and pop shops who really wanted the loans never got it. It went to the Kentucky Fried Chickens of the world. So that's a big problem. And, I think the government does not have its act together, and we need to improve that significantly. And that's the reason why we need to protect the people. And UBI makes a lot of sense until we get through this crisis.
Yeah, I mean, as a fellow capitalist, I would take the position that a basic income, it just provides a floor for people. It doesn't change the free market dynamics of people who start companies and become greatly successful. And to your point about some of the COVID relief stuff, I think some of those well-intentioned programs in the stimulus, like they ended up going in strange places. And if it had gone directly to the people, probably, would have more efficiently also used market forces to allocate that money. Maybe people would have gone to their Main Street store. They would have, frequented businesses nearby instead of having it go to, United Airlines or wherever all that money went.
So, Tom, I talk about data-driven government, and it's very simple. We have all the data. There are companies that are filing their taxes. You have all the numbers you need. We made them go through the hoops. You need to fill this, you need to fill that. And one of my friends who runs a company told me the story where he was not able to submit his application and get confirmation back. And everybody is very tech here, right? I mean, what they did was they tried out different browsers. They're trying this browser and that browser. Eventually, I think the Chrome browser version something finally ended up managed to submit it through and get confirmation back, which is like a tragedy. I mean, what is this? You have all the data. Let's figure out, how we can make it easy for people, process the loans without going through the middlemen of the banks, and have that check deposited into the bank account, right? This is what we should have done.
Yeah, I mean, should at least work on Safari as well, right? So, Rishi, let me ask you another question, which I think is very relevant to the area of the world and the country we're in now, which is immigration. I am the product of American immigration. My father came to this country in 1970 as an engineer when the country was looking for more civil engineers back when civil engineering was kind of a thing. And, because of that, he was able to work on important stuff, including like stuff for NASA and really cool projects. And obviously we're in Silicon Valley, a lot of people that came from all over the world. We attract some great talent. I hear stories of companies that want to hire a fresh grad out of Stanford or MIT, but they're not an American citizen. So then they have to go back to Korea or, France or wherever they came from. And it just seems strange that our immigration system doesn't allow the best and brightest to get here. At the same time, we're also a nation of immigrants where you don't have to have a PhD in AI, to come to the country. What would you do, or what kinds of reforms would you support when it comes to how our immigration system works?
So, once again, I talk about data-driven immigration. What does that mean? What happens now is we have legal immigration and we have illegal immigration, right? So all that stuff is happening. And unless we have a keen insight in terms of how this is impacting our country, we will not be able to make adjustments, When you look at H-1B, for example, the working visa, that's been exploited by companies, and we need to redo this, create a version 2 of the H-1B system. But when I look at it in the context of Silicon Valley, we have done well here because some of the best of minds from the best universities across the world arrive here with dreams of being rich, of rolling out companies, because that's what they have seen. And they get excited looking at Silicon Valley and the innovation happening here. They want to show up here, right? So I think we need to make it easier for people from every part of the world, for highly skilled tech labor to arrive here. And this is how we can continue to be successful. Silicon Valley is the 19th largest economy. Can it become the 10th largest economy? Tom, I think so. We can do that. What I've talked about is a mega Silicon Valley. There are 21 counties connecting with Silicon Valley spread across outside of the Bay Area, and including the 10 counties of the Bay Area. Can we build a mega Silicon Valley by connecting them with a high-speed transportation, which is a zero greenhouse gas tunnel-based system, high speed, not the bullet train, and then we could spark an innovation economy in cities like Stockton, Modesto, Sacramento, Fresno, Bakersfield, and bring it all together. So that's the kind of innovation we need to see happen here, and we need to attract a lot more talent. Let's bring them on here, and let's dominate the world with respect to our technology. That's really what I would like to see, and that immigration policy should help areas like Silicon Valley to succeed like nobody else can. So I think that's the foundation of an immigration policy that I talk about. For example, we have quota systems, and we make it, it's a 10, 15, 20-year process to get somebody from a visa, like a student visa or a working visa, and to get them into a permanent residency, which is very unfair because many of them are rolling out companies. They are really helping out the economy in huge ways. They are rolling out patents, and they are doing some amazing work, but they are stuck in a limbo because they don't know when they will get their permanent residency. We have to make it easier.
What's your sense of the future of Silicon Valley in a world where face-to-face contact is becoming like very challenging with the coronavirus? I mean, you hear of people now saying, well, maybe I should move to Nevada or Oregon and just work remotely. Do you think this area's future will kind of change because the way we work could evolve because of for these health reasons?
So, I truly don't think so. And I'll qualify that. Essentially, what we are observing right now is a little blip on the radar. What will happen likely is by early next year, we'll be sort of getting back to the open economy where it'll become much more of a normal world. And, we will end up innovating to address the challenges that are going on, which is what Silicon Valley does. We are opportunity driven, and we will roll out the next Zoom company of the world. I don't know. It'll come out from some of the established enterprise companies out here, or it could be happening through a startup that is actually building out a solution. So that for sure, how about like having hologram meetings? The future, if you look at that, it's going to be, we'll build a forum to have online collaboration. We'll have a startup technology that will help power that for sure, right? So I can see that happening for sure. But I don't think so that we can, those face-to-face interactions, they're very, very powerful. And plus, when you look at, but here is the one thing, Tom, this area is very special. You look at the kind of people here, the vibrancy of the culture that we have here, food and education and like meetups. I don't think so. What we have here is something very, very special that probably a lot of other parts of the world would essentially fall over trying to get what we have here. So, we'll get back to the normal world, and things will get back to, having face-to-face meetings, going to meetups, having conferences, because this is truly what makes it special. I don't think so we can truly do everything in an online world that goes on typically in a day-to-day in the pre-COVID-19 days of Silicon Valley. So this is temporary. We'll get back to normalcy, and nobody, this is the future essentially. We'll actually do better compared to where we are today, and Silicon Valley will always remain on the map as the innovators of the world.
Yeah, I remember in the past when I've worked on kind of seating arrangements with teams and stuff at companies I've worked with, and sometimes even like 30, 40 meters difference, or if you put two teams on different floors, the dynamics completely change. And so I tend to agree with you that although we can get so much done now remotely, I think we're kind of drafting off of established relationships that we had face to face. But it would be really hard to start a company or start a new team and then grow it and evolve it the way it needed to be with pure remote work. Yeah. But certainly, I guess we'll be trying to close that gap over time. And in the meantime, I suspect the unique concentration of talent and weather and financing that we have here in California will continue to pay off.
I'll give you an example, Tom. When you look at startups, 10, 20 people, they all, go and take vacations together. They get a house rental by the beach. They're having a good time. They're team building, right? This is when you are a startup, you're putting like 70, 80, 100 hours a week. And, you really want to build good teaming. It will not happen in the world of online. When you look at also, I'll give you one more example. We do a lot of backyard fundraisers. Well, we did that in the pre-COVID-19 days. And we did these Zoom meetings that were meant to be fundraisers, but they were actually, no, I don't know what it was. It was just very, very different. And you couldn't make anything happen in a Zoom online meeting. It's nothing like, meeting somebody, shaking hands, connecting with them. And this online world will never, ever provide that. We felt so short when we look at what we could have done with these backyard meetings compared to having a Zoom online fundraiser. It doesn't work out.
Yeah. No, I hopefully this is, you're right that this is a temporary anomalous time. And I know we're running towards the end of the interview. So I want to ask you, Rishi, are there topics that we did not hit that you wanted to highlight, or any information about your campaign or how people can get involved that you want to call out for the audience?
Well, I'll just say this, Tom, it was a pleasure talking to you. Your questions were great. And I really enjoyed just chatting through some of these topics. But, essentially what we are looking at is an opportunity to have someone who gets tech into Congress and see how we can impose our will upon the economy, create a lot more jobs, create economic prosperity, but also address some of the challenges like traffic. Our commute time has gone 3x, 5x. And our elected leaders have gone to sleep on the wheel. We have lots of career politicians who, I call it, run activity for the sake of activity. And they publish pretty long emails that talks about things that we did. And in Silicon Valley, we talk about what problem have you solved? What problem have you solved? And I can guarantee you this, that if you give me a chance, we'll be taking on the big challenges and we'll be there to address the big needs of Silicon Valley and of America. So we are very excited, pumped up. We see a clear roadmap to victory. And next year will be Washington, and we will be disrupting Washington just a tad little bit.
I hope you will, Rishi. And as a future constituent, I can't wait to see what you can do in DC. I appreciate that you have this race to win. And anytime I see a challenger go after someone who's been there for decades, I generally feel like, well, I gotta have a bias for the challenger just to kind of shake things up a little bit. And the fact that you come from a tech background and a problem solver kind of approach is great. And the fact that you had Chinese food with Andrew Yang, I mean, right there, that's gotta count for something. So it sounds like, I guess the last question I would have for you is, if there were a post-COVID sort of recovery bill that proposed a universal basic income for a period of 12 to 18 months, just to help people transition back, instead of these large block grants to specific corporations or specific programs, would you be open to supporting that?
Absolutely, yes.
All right. No hesitation. Yeah. Well, the Yang Gang appreciates that. So Yang Gang, if you are watching this live or on replay, go check out rishikumar.com. He is running against a long-time incumbent. So a lot of potential to shake things up. And hopefully we'll hear from Rishi again on the show after you win.
Tom, yeah, I'll give you one more trivia fact,
Yeah.
if you don't mind.
Go for
The
it.
very first, the Mandarin flyer that went out in my city of Saratoga in the last 62 years of election history was from me.
I love it.
And we had actually two Chinese Americans running in that particular race, and they were flabbergasted as to what happened. Essentially, the Chinese Americans of Saratoga loved the work that we had done. We run Lego Robotics Boot Camp, entrepreneurship boot camp, but we know how to connect with the people and solve problems, and this is what has defined success. So we see a pretty good political future for us in terms of winning and solving the big challenges. Thank you so much, Tom.
I really appreciate it, Rishi. And in the spirit of outcomes and impact and results, so 2 years from now, when we have you back at the end of your first term, I'm going to ask you, Rishi, what problems have you solved? And I don't want to hear a bunch of, I went to this meeting, I went to that meeting.
Yes.
Deal?
Of course, it's a deal. And that's how we approach things. Like in my first 4 years in the city council, we took on two challenges: burglaries and San Jose Water Company water rates. Mm-hmm. We have rejected, reduced, suspended 8 water rates, and we dropped burglaries by 47%. It's a numbers game, right? As long as we can establish trust with the people, Saratoga, we are a fairly diverse city, but we have only 10% Indian Americans. So I really don't have a base, so-called. Mm-hmm. But people voted me in with the most votes in 60 years election history of Saratoga. Why? Because you were getting things done.
Right on, brother. I love it. I love it. We'll wish you the best of luck. And with that, we'll say goodbye, nerds.
Thank you so much, Tom. Goodbye, nerds.